I have a new game for you. But the one thing about it is, when you look at dead games, a lot of them are really unique games that have very interesting premises and sometimes really unique rule sets. And those games have a certain flavor and charm. That's why I'm drawn to them. That's why I prefer games that aren't being mass produced, that aren't available everywhere, where you have to kind of search to go find it. This is a new game, which I actually think is very good, but that's because it reminds me of the old school. And let me just show you this. This game, which I got when it first came out, but I've had it sitting for a while. This is this Quar's War, also just known as Quar, the Clash of Rifles box set. This is a war game fought with 28mm miniatures that uses an almost Dungeons and Dragons style rolling system. It doesn't use the D20s. It uses 3d6. This box set gives you two squads, like 12 on one side, 12 on the other. I think they point balance out to 10 with a support guy on one side and 11, or no, I think it's 11 or 12 with a support guy on the other. They give you enough for 12 miniatures for each side, and it's a very simple cardstock paper box. Very well put together. I like the production quality of this. And one thing I'm going to point out right off the bat, Peter Dennis did the art for this box, which is hilarious. Peter Dennis is not a fantasy artist. He's very well known for doing the art in Osprey books and for the Bolt Action series. So they were truly thinking war game when they got Peter Dennis on board. The box set comes with a micro poster that is not a micro poster. It is the quick play guide, which I like. It describes how you roll the 3d6, rolling low, by the way. You know how in Dungeons and Dragons you have your stat, which is hopefully higher than 11? In this game, what is it usually? Yeah, the skill rating here is 12 or 13 for most of these guys. If you go down the list, you're trying to roll a 12 or 13 or under, depending which guy you have. And I'll be honest with you, trying to roll low with D6s in this day and age is going to be an exercise because most people are trying to get their D6s to roll high. But in any case, it explains how the combat procedure goes. Believe it or not, if you roll like a 3 or a 4, a lot of these ranged actions or melee actions automatically go through. Now, I could explain this right here and now, but I want to kind of unbox this, so I'm going to come back to this. The first thing you get, let me go pick through the small stuff first. Green dice. I like green. Green's my favorite color. But they're just ordinary D6s. These are probably made by Coplo or Chessex and just thrown into the box. You get a deck of cards. The deck of cards has leaf symbols, and they represent 3, 4, or 5. How you play the game is you shuffle the deck, put it down, the opponent draws a card, and the person opposite that opponent plays out his turn. You get your first 3 actions for free, which, by the way, it's a good idea to knock those into leadership actions. More on that later. But you get the first 3 actions, and you ask, do I have a 4th action? The other player must answer correctly, yes or no. And then they take a 4th action. Then they can ask, do I have a 5th action? The other player must correctly ask yes or no. The reason you draw the card isn't to try to gimmick out the opponent. It's just so that they don't know how many actions they can pull. 3, 4, 5. This deck is biased towards 4. So you can always bet on 3, but a gambler can bet on 4 and hope that 4th action comes through. He might get a 5, who knows? And then it switches back and forth. When it's the opponent's turn, you draw the card, and the opponent has to ask you, okay, do I have a 4th action? These are the standard bases made by Wargames Atlantic. This, by the way, is a Wargames Atlantic plastic product, so I like that. Wargames Atlantic is kind of I think they're in England or New England. They're either in one place or the other. And they're a plastic competitor to Games Workshop. They make very good stuff. They do. Their historicals are great, and I haven't bought some of the historicals I want from them yet just because of time and energy and stuff, but they're good. They give you 24 bases for both sides of 12. So there's that. These are the Wargames Atlantic sprues. You get 4 sprues. They are not per faction. These are the Crusader faction. These are the Croftier faction. The Croftier faction, I looked through for specialist items. They get everything they're supposed to get. They get 2 versions of the Doru. They get their machine gun. Most of them are just packing the rifle. And almost every one of them has like a rifle stowed position. The Crusaders, of course, get 3 of their heavy rifles. Their weapon seems to be water cooled, which seems funny, by the way. Then they have the option in there. Yeah, in the book, you get a shotgun, but the shotgun doesn't exist here. They also, I think, they have a support machine gun. You don't get that here either. This is just the heavy rifle and the basic water cooled rifle they get. The Crofterians get their light machine gun, which is used by the squad. They get their rifles, and they get 2 examples of submachine gun they use, which is more of an assault weapon. They also get 1 hat per side. The Crofterians get a knit hat, whereas the Crusaders... Where are the Crusader hat? The Crusaders get a Beetle Bailey hat. That's what they get, a Beetle Bailey hat for their basic hat guy. So that is the plastic you get. And it's good quality plastic. These feel as strong as Games Workshop sprues. That's to be said. Last but not least, this Quar's Wars, a Rifler's Pocketbook. Now, the funny thing about this game is that there is a full rule book, but it's a PDF. It's a large PDF that allows you to essentially, it has extended rules for all kinds of things. This pretty much gets those squads going. But it is the full rules as far as the basic rules mechanics. No major mechanics are left out. So it happens. Most of the art, by the way, is like this watercolor and inks, which I like quite a bit. The flavor of the setting I've got to bring up is kind of a Jim Henson setting. The Quar are almost Muppet-like anteater creatures, and they're fighting this war because the Crusaders want to unify the entire Quar world, and the Crofterians are one of, I think, 3 or 4 royalist factions that want to keep their original culture. If you want to know, I myself am feeling myself being part of the Crofterians because I like holding on to culture. And so, Croftier down here. Fidwog is coming out with a new plastic box in the near future, so you're going to get a Fidwog expansion. They're almost like dwarves, so they're smaller than normal Quar, but they're ferocious. The Crusaders have taken over most of the land, but there are small rebellions cropping up, and then the Fidwog are, in the Croftier, fighting off the rest of the world pretty much. The crazy thing about it is that we're also getting a Partisans box, which I am very much thinking about grabbing just so I could fill out my box here. And Partisans are just normal people who want to fight off the Crusade everywhere else. So the Crusade thinks they have control, but they don't. So, looking into it, it's actually a very old school, mostly read text. There are a few charts, but there's not a ton of art here and there. It's just, hey, here's the rules you need to play the game. Now, some of the art is there. It's pretty cool. I like this one here where they're evading a bombshell. It's got a map of the local area where the Crofterians and the Crusaders are fighting. Those are Crusader tanks. One of them is merely just an up-armored tractor. The other one is a proper tank. Their tanks are kind of weird. They either have like what they call unipeds, where it's just one track and you sit in back like a motorcycle, or they have things where the tracks are down below and the rest of the tank sits on top of the tracks like the entire tank is a turret. So, funny thing there. But yeah, there's the Crusaders. Their flag looks like an upside-down flying squirrel. And there's their equipment. They shows you how they're organized. It's a unit of 10 men, and they're very powerful. The Bogan rifle, no, it's the Rishi rifle. The Rishi rifle is like the American bar, so it's a high-caliber semi-automatic weapon that can put out a lot of fire. Yeah, the light machine gun and the Grifkis shotgun are not present on the sprue, but they're cool. I think they're really cool. But they're mentioned here. You don't get the actual miniatures for them yet. The Crofterians have this symbol, this flag that kind of looks like a building with 3 leaves arranged beneath it. They're definitely royalist types. They're definitely into clan, king, and country, so they're very much family bound. And they really enjoy their old school culture. They remind me of, they're pretty English, if you ask me. And the Crofterians, they have blue and yellow uniforms. They have 6 rifles in one group, 2 guys backing up the machine gunner, and they have an individual commander. So that's their organization. All the weapons you see descripted here, you get. There is no, it's missing from the sprue. You get all the Crofterian weapons. I myself feel lucky in that regard, and that I don't have to go out and buy upgrades for my preferred faction. How it works, like I said, is you grab 3d6. You roll 3d6 underneath the skill rating you need. When you hit in close combat, when you hit in melee, you roll your might value versus the enemy's toughness. If you match it, I believe you gobsmack them. If you double it, they're out of action. If you triple it, you kill them outright, which is kind of hard to do in this game. Very few people have really good kill values. The trench runners that the Crofterians run, I think they get that. They also get shotguns. So there's that. One thing to know about this game that's different, there's two things I'll bring up. If you don't have leadership models, you're going to be activating one guy at a time. When you say those actions you get from the leaves are individual actions. So you're not sending your entire group forward. You pick essentially 3 to 5 guys and work with them unless you have leaders. One thing I bought, just for the heck of it, I bought a blister, they need to make blisters of Syphocast guys, of Crofterian officers, so I can actually field an extra leader. With the size of squad I have over there, one of these guys would be good enough. There's 2 of them in there just for variety. One looks cautious, one has an aggressive pose. The Crofterian leadership will come in handy. The other thing I ought to mention is that thing Gobsmacked that I mentioned. They have a really cool status in here. Well, there's 2 of them really, but they have Gobsmacked. The first step is that you get Gobsmacked, which means essentially you're not ready for combat. You can't perform steady actions which give the pluck benefit to your side. You can't do that. You are kind of forced to either move half speed to cover, lie prone, or you have to pull yourself together, which I believe you just spend an action and you pull yourself together. There's no skill test. If there is a skill test, I forgot it. But when I looked through the actions in this book, it says you just spend the action point and they just pull themselves together. So it's easy to get ungobsmacked. Out of action is cool because it's not killed. Killed is what happens if you kill a model. But out of action means the guy's laying down and you don't know what condition he's in. A fellow friendly model can go over to them, and once they're in base contact, you can make an action check to tend to the fallen guy. On a 1 or a 2, he's actually okay and he can stand up and get going. Wait, he doesn't stand up automatically, but he starts prone and he can stand up and get going. 3 and 4 are different versions of wounded, with 3 being the better one and 4 being the terrible one. On a 5 or a 6, the guy's dead. So this game isn't super lethal, but it's also more personable, where your casualties can mean more than just you remove the model from the field. You actually care about each individual guy that goes down. And I like that. It makes combat personal. And for a game that's kind of Jim Henson's flavored, you kind of got that. The box itself has the ability to turn into terrain. It has cutouts, 1 building, 1 thing of bushes, 2 things of barbed wire, which usually should go hand in hand. There's some alien-looking grass here. They have a pub sign. There is a target which shows a Crofterian's butt as the center of the bullseye. That's pretty hilarious. A road sign and a few small flower bushes here and there that you can put here in various different places. I honestly think this game deserves better terrain than what they have printed on the side of the box, but that's there just in case. Here's the back of the box. It shows painted miniatures from the Crusaders. They wear standard army green, and then your standard army boys. And you have the Crofterians, which of course are dressed in bright blue, and they stand out as being colorful and charismatic. Now, I'm into military games, so army green is not something I'm scared of or anything, but I like the Crofterians more. One thing I gotta stress about the Quar's War is it's a fantasy war game kind of based on World War I.5 levels of technology. You've got no magic in this game. Everybody is considered a normal dude. There also aren't very many heroes. They have named heroes, but what the named heroes are is ordinary people who have stats like everybody else does. They just happen to have done more in the past, and so you know their names. One thing I know about the upcoming box sets, the partisans are ordinary people with guns, which suits the flavor of the setting, trust me. The Fidwogs are a bunch of little angry Scotsmen Quar that have a tank. They get a micro tank. It's like a go-kart with armor on it, except for instead of having go-kart wheels, it's got treads. I love the Fidwog. They're really cool. But I can't afford to just throw money at plastic models for a game that very few people will play. My thought on this, you can see I bought this box in the spring when it came out. It's a brand new war game that came out this year. However, it isn't. Paul Thierry, the guy who owns the IP, he's been trying to push Quar with metal miniatures and his rulebooks online for like the last 12 years or something like that. It's zombiesmith.com. That's where he's got his side projects, his friends' side projects, and the Quar original metals. So he originally made metal miniatures. Now he's going into plastic. And the one thing I can tell you about the Quar's zombiesmith.com, the original war game is bigger and different. This is a smaller, comfy skirmish game that you can play casually with friends. This basic box set is actually a really good box set for a newbie who wants to get wargaming to get into, primarily because the math is a little bit more complex and because it shows you basic war game conventions without just going into, I roll a bunch of dice, I sweep enemies off the table. I like that. I like that a lot. Here is Quar's War, the Clash of Rifles. They have individual blisters you can buy. They're either metal on the Zombiesmith site. Some war game shops that carry Quar's War carry the new Siocast miniatures, include stuff like officers, heavy gunners, trench fighters. I think they have cavalry and machine gun support for either side too. They're coming out with the Fidwog that get essentially small tanks as well as their Scotsmen. So I think it's two different sprues. You get a Scotsman sprue, then you get a Scotsman plus tank sprue, and you'll get like 2 sprues in the box, so you'll have 2 tanks and a bunch of little Fidwog Scotsmen. Then you get partisans, which are just ordinary people with guns. So it'll be like 24 ordinary people. I like that. Quar's War has a thing where, because of how the rule set is, a lot of stuff is uncertain. It's not just I march up with my guys and blast your unit with my rifles. It's this guy runs up, takes an aimed shot, and he sees how he does with it. I haven't built it yet. As you can see, I still have the box set out of the wrapper, just flopping around with my officers ready to be made in the future. I don't know when I'll ever get to play this or assemble this or whatnot. I think Quar's War is going to take the back burner just because there's so much other stuff. I do a lot of Flames of War stuff, Bolt Action as the 3rd edition. I'm getting back into Battlefleet Gothic. More on that in the future. But the crazy thing is that as far as games go, I really appreciate this came out. I don't know when I get a chance to play it. In a better world, I would get a chance to play it. But right now, the world is full of opportunity, and the bigger your game and the bigger your name, the bigger they're trying to push playing and buying that game. If you want to build terrain, if you want unusual, small, cozy models that are really fun to put together, if you really want a different style of war game, Quar's War, depending where you find it, it'll be between $60 and $90. It's supposed to go for $79.99, but if you can find it for cheaper, there you go. If you find someone selling it for $90, they're scalping you for about 8% price more than they need to. No, 12% more. My math's going in the wrong direction. 12% more than you need to. I like it. And if you have any commentary on Quar's War, post it in the comments below. Your comments might force my action, as well as me finding people who would want to play a crazy little war game. May you have a great rest of your month or week or year, and may the dice ever roll in your favor.